Readers, like all fans, love the opportunity to connect with the creators of their favorite stories. That's what author events are for. They're a place for you to build these connections and answer your fans' questions. So today I want to talk about what to do at an author event besides read. Rarely will an author event be filled with people who are unfamiliar with you and your work. They've likely read a lot of what you've published. So you want to do more than just read from the things they've already read themselves. That's why it's an author event, not just an author reading. Things like sneak peeks, times for questions, and where your ideas came from are what your fans are there to hear. This is Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers, because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and writer. Let's start with what to read at an author event. I know I just said it's an author event, not a reading, but you're likely expected to do a little bit of reading. All I'm saying is that should not be the major focus or the only thing that you do. In a previous video, I talked about how to choose an excerpt to read. Today I want to share how to choose an excerpt to read that's for people who are already fans of your work. It's a little bit different than when you're invited to give a reading somewhere and the audience is not as familiar with your work. When you're doing your author event, you have the benefit of reviews and conversations with fans and knowing what people already like about your books. If you look through your reviews and everybody loves one character, choose an excerpt that has that character in it. If everyone really loves this one scene, read that scene. Pay attention to your reviews to decide which sections your readers are going to enjoy you reading the most. The other thing you want to do at an author event is to read something new. You might share something that's soon to be published. You might write a short flash fiction piece related to your series to read at events. You might have something that's just for that. You might also read something unrelated, something new that you've been working on. Maybe you have a piece that's coming out in an anthology soon. Maybe you also write poetry on the side and you're going to share a little bit of that. Remember, these are people who are familiar with your work already, so you want to give them a taste of something new to let them know you're still writing, there is still more to come. So when you're doing the reading portion of your author event, choose their favorite parts to read and choose something new to read. Next, let's talk about options other than reading. Again, your author event attendees have probably already read everything you've published, or the majority of it. So the reading is not going to be what draws them there. It's the other parts of your event. First, you want to give time for questions. These fans are interested in you and your books, and they likely are curious about certain aspects. So build time for questions into your event. If no one is asking anything right away, prompt questions. Say, have you ever wondered what this part's about? Or do you want to know more about this character and their backstory? What about this character? Do you know what this really is? You might have to prompt them a little bit. If you have a larger group, you can do something that I saw Neil Gaiman do, a famous fantasy author, at a reading in Denver. He gave everyone a slip of paper when they turned in their ticket, and on that slip of paper you wrote a question. Then they all went in a bucket, and while he was giving his presentation, he would randomly pull one out, read the question, and answer it. Now he did skip some. He said if they were similar to a question that was already answered. I personally also think if he didn't find the question inspiring or didn't know how to talk about it, he is giving a presentation, he's trying to be entertaining, so he's going to pick the best questions. You can do something like that as well. If you have a smaller group and it's not big enough for really either of those, have a conversation. This can be even more helpful to you as an author. Think of it kind of as a focus group. Ask them what they love about your books, what they didn't like so much. Take notes, take mental notes or physical notes. Use this time to become a better author, to deliver more of what your fans love. Now, if you have a smaller group and you're having a full-on conversation, know that you're the host and you are in charge of that conversation. That means if it's going in a direction that you don't like or that's making you uncomfortable, you get to steer it back. That's your job a little bit, but it's also your privilege. So if the conversation has steered towards politics or religion or some other polarizing topic that you just don't want to get into, say something like, "Earlier, so-and-so asked this, and I want to say a little bit more about that." Or you might say, "This is something I've been thinking of that I want to share with you guys and get your opinions on." You might also take a break from the conversation and give your reading right then. You might say, "Okay guys, it's time for the reading. I know this is a great conversation, but we do need to keep the event moving." Another thing fans love to learn from authors is what inspired them. They want to know where your ideas came from. They're fascinated by that seed generation. Now, this is different than talking about the writing process. Unless you're talking to a group of other writers, your fans don't want to know about your setting techniques or your revision process. They want to hear where you came up with your idea. That's the part of the process they're the most interested in, generally, in my experience. So share that inspiration. Did you take a hike and see a blood red sunset that inspired your apocalyptic event? Is your minor character based on someone you know? Or is it a combination of people you know? How did you come up with the idea for this one event? Is it based on something in history? Share your inspiration. Similarly, you can also share those juicy tidbits you came across while researching your piece that didn't make it into the story itself. For example, one author I know, William Liggett, wrote the novel Watermelon Snow. It's a climate fiction novel that takes place on a glacier. He actually hiked to and spent a summer on that glacier. So at his author events, he shares a slideshow. He talks about his experience, how that inspired the book, and he also extrapolates on the science. Another author I know writes historical fiction, and her author events are always fun because she always comes up with some new game or trivia piece to talk about. In one of her series, she uses Florence Hartley's The Lady's Book of Etiquette and Manual of Politeness. One of the characters is obsessed with becoming a lady like this book teaches. And J.V.L. Bell uses the book as plot points in a lot of her pieces. And only one time did she take an authorial liberty and make up a part of that book. So she asks her readers to guess which part that was. This is a great conversation starter, and it's fun and interesting. At another event, she gave a trivia quiz where she listed 5 or 6 of her minor characters, and she asked her readers if they knew which ones she made up entirely and which ones were based on real people. That one was fun and interesting. It's crazy, some of the characters who were alive in the Old West. So if your story requires some type of research, that might be another thing you can share at an author event. Last, you of course want to have time for a signing. You are a rock star to your readers. They want your autograph. It can be a little weird when you don't feel that way, but they do. So they want that time, and they want a little bit of that one-on-one conversation time with you. So when you are preparing for your signing, make sure you have a table. I know that seems obvious, but I've been to a couple of author events that didn't have a good signing table. Make sure you bring one with you. Also, make sure you have plenty of pens. These should be the pens that you like writing with, that are going to work well in books, that aren't going to smear or take forever to dry. Maybe you have a color that you always like to sign with, or maybe you just have a favorite brand. Make sure you have at least 3, if not more, just in case. Then another good idea is to have a sticky note pad ready so that people can write down their name and spell it out clearly for you. That way you don't mess it up when signing the books. Along those same lines, you need to think about what you're going to say when you sign a book ahead of time. Are you going to just sign your name? Are you going to say, "Hope you enjoy this," and sign your name? Or is there some line from your book, some saying or something like that, that you can pull out and use as your signature? That can often be more interesting. And finally, you're going to need someone there to help you move the line along. There's always that chatty person who's going to hold it up. You need someone to help you guide them off to the side so that you can get through the rest of the people. Yes, there is a little bit of time for that one-on-one talk, but you shouldn't have one person dominating the signing. So those are some ideas for things you can do at an author event besides read. Next, I want to share why an editor recommends an author event, not just a reading. As I've mentioned, your readers are perfectly capable of reading your books themselves, and they probably already have. That's why we call them readers. That means just giving a reading is not likely going to be a big enough draw to get people out of their houses to your author event. So you need to offer more than just a reading if you want to fill your event. Things like time for questions and conversations, signings, trivia, how you came up with your ideas are all ways of doing that. You can also play other games. You can have a costume contest. You can do things that are related to your book. These are activities that you can put on your flyers and advertisements to help draw people in and get them to your event. You're also promising there will be time for that connection, time for them to learn more about you and the worlds that they love. Author events should be about an experience. You're promising an event, so make sure it's fun, it's interesting, it's entertaining in some way for your readers. What's the best or worst experience you've had at an author event, whether it's one that you attended or one that you were putting on? Share it in the comments below. And for more videos on author events and other aspects of writing, subscribe to Ignited Ink Writing, a channel dedicated to helping authors like you transform your writing so it lingers with your readers. Because writing that lingers gets remembered and recommended to others. I'm Caitlin Burvey, editor and writer. To find out more about me, go to www.ignitedinkwriting.com. There you will also find a timeline of a book. This will help you figure out where in the process of publishing, marketing, and writing your author event should fall. And now it's your turn to plan out your author event, to choose your reading excerpts carefully, to build in time for connections, and to share a little bit about yourself, to keep your fans entertained and ignite your ink.